Res Dogs is a video clerk, a guy who fucking loves movies, making the movie he hadn't seen.
For me, Reservoir Dogs is not an apprentice piece. It's a clarion call to a very interesting and individual and talented new filmmaker. It's consummately crafted.
It's a work of a very cocky kid, full of confidence and not holding back for a minute. Here was a film that went straight for the gut and the throat and punched and choked very hard. Yeah, I think it is, in fact, a monumental film.
What the fuck was I supposed to do? Tell him I'm sorry? I can't give out that fucking information! It's against the rules!
Reservoir Dogs was, for all intents and purposes, the beginning of the arrival of this new generation of maverick filmmakers with these very distinctive voices, and Quentin Tarantino became the leader of that whole generation. You really felt that with his movie Reservoir Dogs. It was really very much a wake-up call to other filmmakers and to people in the film community. Sort of sit up and pay attention. Quentin Tarantino's here. The whole tone of the film was so ineffably cool. I mean, that really became the new definition of what was cool, and Quentin defined that.
Quentin's awfully nice to his actors. He puts songs behind them that make them fucking gods. You know, these are gods. These are people that have the coolest soundtrack in the world behind them. You know, that began with Res Dogs. That Res Dogs soundtrack is a awesome soundtrack, right? You know, and you know, you sit there, you listen to that, you know, you watch. I mean, to move in slow motion to that music, that's what's cool, right? You know, I mean, it's one of those things. You wish to God you were that cool.
Music was a big part of all his movies. But it was not just the music, because also the clothing, that whole look with the skinny ties, is also very retro. So you had young people on the streets of London who started dressing like Reservoir Dogs. They'd wear, you know, black jackets and white shirts with skinny black ties and shades. You know, that was, and by the way, you'd see that look imitated in advertising and in a lot of different places, and also, of course, in lots of knockoffs, wannabe kind of Reservoir Dog type inspired films.
I think when young and new filmmakers saw that film, saw Reservoir Dogs, they had the sense that a new idiom had been created, and it was their idiom. It was the way of speaking of their generation. So it was as if you know, Tarantino had given everybody permission to go in that particular direction.
What the fuck was I talking about?
I think it made the pop culture references very mainstream. I think it, probably more so than a film like Clerks, which might have gone that way anyway as an independent work. It told, I think, the studios that they could riff and go off in unexpected directions with a film like this. Suddenly pop references were appearing in all sorts of unexpected places in different films. And I think because of Tarantino's success, the studios felt very comfortable emulating it.
I don't tip.
You don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
You don't believe in tipping?
Do you know what these chicks make? They make shit. Don't give me that. She don't make enough money, she can quit.
Tarantino is very clever as a writer in giving us this amusing, engaging banter, but at the same time suggesting other currents that are flowing underneath. It was a style that led to many imitators, but it wasn't altogether a new style. And if you go back, for example, to Shakespeare, if you look at any text of a Shakespeare play, you'll see whole sections of footnotes. And very often these things were about contemporary matters, you know, about contemporary celebrities or events or whatever. that today we really know nothing about. But for an audience in the 16th century, at the end of the 16th century, it would have had pretty much, I think, a similar effect to what, Tarantino was doing.
You remember the Fantastic Four?
Oh yeah, with that invisible bitch and Flame On and shit.
Thing. Motherfucker looks just like the Thing.
I'd never had my poet bard of my generation, right? And that's kind of what Quentin did. People talk with a fast, quick, witty sort of banner, but in films, they talk in dialogue. Quentin understands that there's a poetry and a pentameter to the way we speak when we get excited and passionate about things. And that's what he infused into his characters. It's not just that they're talking about self-referential things, it's that they're talking about it and they fucking believe that shit.
What is this? That's an amusing anecdote about a drug deal.
What?
Something funny that happened to you while you're doing a fucking job, man.
Damn. I gotta memorize all this? There's over 4 fucking pages of
Look,
this
man,
shit.
just think about it like it's a joke, all right? You memorize what's important, the rest you make your own, all right? You can tell a joke, can't you?
I mean, Sam Jackson has often said that when he reads Quentin Tarantino scripts, it's like he's reading dialogue taken out of his mind that he's just never spoken yet, right? That's one of those things Quentin does, is he sits there and he hits somebody and he knows what sort of enthusiasm, what sort of dialogue, what sort of passion they have, and he gives them the dialogue to just spit it out, and it's fucking amazing.
I think it's very much of a piece of those kinds of movies whose violence was not just a gratuitous violence, or that it was a new level of violence that had people talking, that set a new bar for what could be done on screen or for what is shocking to audience members, but also what connects in some way. Because you're having many violent films, there's horror films all the time, but there was something about the violence that felt like it was new, and that was not just about the brutality of it, but it was the whole tone of the film.
I think it hits harder in part because of his choices of the amount of blood in the scenes and the way he chose to heighten the color of red in the blood so it really stood out. And also because of the length of the scenes. Conventionally, in a crime thriller, if not a film noir piece, scenes would not be so extended. Scenes would move much more rapidly. There'd be much more cutting. But he often would hold in very long master shots where you saw the consequence of the violence. Because he held those images for so long, because he colored them so vividly, even though we might not have actually seen the act of violence, or it was a quick act of violence, he really gave it a chance to penetrate. Yeah, the body count in the movie was actually pretty low compared to most films of his genre. It's just that he chose to dwell on it.
I think that Tarantino uses the pain to entertain. And that's something a lot of people are, uncomfortable with. There's the sense of a mischievous, subversive, arrogant, creative intelligence at work here. And we feel challenged when we see graphic violence presented by somebody who's that clever.
Well, I don't know why I came here tonight. I got the feeling there's something ain't right. I'm so scared.
Of course, one becomes complicit in a sense with the violence as we go through the movie. We pay for it, but that complicity worries us as well. And here were a bunch of guys, here were men behaving like little boys. And the film made no apologies for that.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Would you repeat it?
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy? are you gonna bite?
Oh, Christ. Hey, look, you two assholes, calm the fuck down. Hey, come on, back up. What are we on a playground here, huh? Am I the only professional?
I think for the first time since Peckinpah and the Wild Bunch, I think it took the notion of violence to a visceral extreme. What's interesting, too, in terms of that, is that Tarantino was, I think, had a degree of empathy for you, for the audience, because at least in the cut of the film that went out theatrically, you don't see the cutting of the ear. He does, in fact, pan away. You see him holding the ear afterwards and joking, talking into it, and then throwing it away.
Hey, what's going on? You hear that?
You know, it also showed that violence can be funny, it can be absurd, horrifying, banal, that a whole range of tone and emotion can be communicated by using it.
I think one of the things that's really remarkable about Tarantino's film is that while it absolutely sucker punches you in the gut, it's also very funny. And like Hitchcock, the comic elements, the darkly comedic elements are disarming. And as a result, you're a little more vulnerable to the action. And when the jolts take place, they become all the more gut-wrenching. They become all the more exciting.
Some people could accept the playfulness of it, the wicked playfulness of it. Others, some of whom may have been really strongly and powerfully affected by it, just simply could not accept that level of sadism on the screen. And it did raise the bar for graphic violence and sadism in a way that I think permitted some filmmakers to kind of cash in on the thrill, on the frisson, you know, on the simple, visceral excitement of it all.
The reason, you know, and the reason that, you know, when you look at, you know, early works of artists that are just breathlessly brilliant, it's because they're filling a void, right? There's something missing and they know what it is and they just do it, okay? Reservoir Dogs was what was missing in American cinema.
It's so extraordinary in its use of non-linearity, in its counterpointed tonality. But really, it was the one he had to do. True Romance, for example, although it's a very dynamic film, is much more conventional in terms of its narrative, in terms of its subject matter. I believe the title page of the screenplay originally read, Reservoir Dogs, written by and to be directed by Quentin Tarantino.
What's amazing to me is, in watching it again after all these years, how many moments in the movie almost seem to be kind of cliche. But then you have the realization that he in fact created the moment, and it's everybody else in emulation of it that suddenly has made it a bit of a cliche.
I mean, I think if you were alive and making movies in the 90s, I don't think that you could really ignore that the impact and just the language, the visual language, and the tone, as I said, of his work. So whether it inspired those directors in a very direct way, or whether it just influenced them generally as they were doing their own work, I think that he is probably the most important director of the 90s in terms of influencing, in terms of setting the tone for his time and for his generation, and also influencing directly the work of a lot of other directors, good directors and bad directors.
Reservoir Dogs was that first punch into the center of your chest to knock the air out of you. And Pulp Fiction was the finesse Muhammad Ali, you know, of just making you feel like an idiot for ever stepping in the ring, you know? And that's what Quentin Tarantino did with Res Dogs. Res Dogs was the power.
Coming back to the film after a few years, I found it powerful, fresh, inventive, It's so cleverly constructed. You know, it's sound. It coheres, and it has an intelligence and a mischief about it that is very compelling. I think it's set to last for a while.